During the Khilafah of Banu Abbas, the believers went through a stage of 18 years where their Aqidah was being tested, where their Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was being pushed to the brink, where a man who is going to be born in the year 164 is going to earn the title of Imam Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, to the point where later scholars would say about him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected the Iman of the Muslims by two people. One of them being Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu during the wars of apostasy, when the people refused to pay zakah and when they were believing in false prophets. And the other being Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hanbal al-Shaybani rahimahullah, who during the time of three khulafa or three khalifas that would rule back to back, he would be tested, and the Muslims in general would be tested, and their Iman would be tested to the point where if the people were to give up at this critical moment, the Islam that you and I have might not be the same. This is a fitna that occurred due to bid'ah being widespread at the time, to the point where the people began believing in philosophy and adding it into the religion, using philosophy to undermine the aqidah of the Muslims, to the point where it became that we had to use our rationale and we had to use our minds over the Quran and the Sunnah. What they began doing during the Khilafah of Ma'mun was that the people would be put to test on whether the Quran was created or not. And one by one scholars would fall, either because they feared or they did not want the punishment to come, and they had fear of what was going to happen. So they would say it, but they would rely on the verse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that was revealed to talk about Ammar when he said something that was disrespectful to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of the torture that he was in, something that he did not want to say. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes him and he says that the one that his heart was filled with Iman, but he was forced to say something, there is no blame on them. But from amongst these people, there stood a man, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, the author of the Musnad, the author of many amazing books, the Imam of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that it didn't matter what they did to him, he would continue to persist upon that the Quran was not created, and he would hold on to the Aqidah of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and through him that it would continue to be spread after. When we think about Imam Ahmad, we always have to go to the beginning when he was born. He was born in Baghdad, which at the time was a booming city of knowledge, of Islam, where it was a place that the people would go to seek knowledge. So he grew up in a place that allowed him to already become an Imam at a very young age, to the point where he gained all of the knowledge that was available in Baghdad. He began traveling to all of the lands of the Muslims. A journey that began when he was 15 years old, seeking knowledge, would take him all the way to Mecca, to Medina, to Yemen, to Syria. It would take him to Egypt, many different places in search of the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Through his seeking of knowledge, he reaches a point where Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, when he leaves Baghdad, he says, I have not left a person in Medina who has more knowledge when it comes to the ahadith, who has more knowledge when it comes to fiqh, who is more God-fearing, who understands the beliefs of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, more than Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He was a student, this was the student that he was talking about, a student that he loved dearly, a student who was going to not only elevate his own status with the dedication that he showed to Islam and to La ilaha illallah, but also elevate the status of his teacher Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. So for 18 years, slowly this aqidah and this test of the believers, they're going through it. So what ends up happening is that eventually Imam Ahmad, he is tested. Twice actually this happens to him. The first time he refuses, but the scholars that were with him, they begin to say out of fear that they had and the excuse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him, they submit to the saying of the Quran was created. But Imam Ahmad would not budge, and he would also not budge when it would come to other statements that they wanted him to say that were in line with the aqidah of the Mu'tazilas. But what did he do? Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he remained patient, to the point where for 28 months he's going to be in jail. where he's going to be tortured, where he's going to be prevented from teaching, where the people are going to turn against him one by one, and to the point where Ma'mun, he actually tells them, bring him to Tarsus. And this was a city in modern day Turkey where he was based at the time, and Imam Ahmad is being brought to him, and he begins to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he says, Ya Allah, deal with him, protect me from his evil. And Ma'mun, before he could meet Imam Ahmad, he actually even prepared the sword that he was going to use to kill him, because he refused to bow down to this claim that they were making. He refused to fall into the bid'ah that they were bringing. He refused to say that the Quran was created. So what ends up happening is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers the dua of Imam Ahmad, and before they reach this city in Turkey, he dies. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah then is in between these two places. The next person that is going to take the Khilafah, it is going to be Mu'tasim Billah. He becomes the Khalifa, and after he becomes the Khalifa, he tries to fulfill the promise that he made to the previous Khalifa, and he tells them, I am going to do to Imam Ahmad what you have asked. And he sends a letter saying, bring Imam Ahmad back to Baghdad. And he is brought back to Baghdad, and he is imprisoned. But before he is imprisoned, he's going through a series of punishments where he's going to be lashed, where he's going to be beaten, and the people are saying, those that are around the Khalifa, let me the one that kills him, let me be the one that kills this kafir, this disbeliever. They were making these claims against him. Why? Because he refused to say that the Quran was created, and he would continuously tell them, tell me something from the Quran and Sunnah so that I can say it. And he understood that he had to be patient, and he understood that no matter how difficult it was going to get, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised him that inna ma'al usri yusra, indeed with every difficult situation ease is going to come. So what ends up happening to him, they try to debate him one after the other, and he's victorious in all of their debates, and they are unable to defeat him when it comes to using the proofs from the Quran and the Sunnah, because of the knowledge that he was able to acquire. So all they could do is turn to accusing him of being upon falsehood, of being touched by some sort of shaitan, and so on and so on. But he held on to the beliefs of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah that had been transferred down, that has been narrated down all the way from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what ends up happening to him, eventually Mu'tasim passes away. Then Al-Wathiq Billah becomes the Khalifa, and he is going to be the worst in terms of how he deals with Imam Ahmad, because as a young boy, the Mu'tazilites would begin teaching him, and they would begin filling his minds with this bid'ah, and they would continue his teaching to the point where he becomes even their best Khalifa that they've had. So he begins to torture Imam Ahmad even more and more and more, to the point where this beating goes so far that they fear the people are going to revolt, the people are going to come and attack us. So he says, let Imam Ahmad go back to his house and let him get cured. And while this is happening, Wathiq Billah passes away. Then afterwards Mutawakkil comes, and he's going to be the one that has mercy on Imam Ahmad. But Imam Ahmad rahimahullah had to go through the stage, and it was a stage of difficulty. It was a time where he suffered greatly, but he had to go through it. And then eventually today you and I are talking about him and referring to him as Imam Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the Imam of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, because through him the Aqeedah of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah was saved. So we have to understand the difficulty that he faced. We need to be thankful for, and we need to actually make dua for Imam Ahmad, for the sacrifice he made for you and I to have this Iman that we have today. May Allah grant us Iman.